Benvinguts, benvingudes. Welcome to this last day of Model Festival d'Arquitectures de Barcelona. Aquest és un esdeveniment que es va començar l'any passat com una tradició per intentar donar veu i produir un espai de reflexió sobre les instal·lacions que es produeixen com una part essencial d'aquest festival d'arquitectures. Avui acabem aquest festival a la instal·lació de Permanent Temporal, de Kosmos i de Parabase, un equip d'arquitectes que ha decidit col·laborar per a fer aquesta instal·lació, per a presentar-se en aquest concurs, el concurs d'arquitectures experimentals Model, que aquesta primera edició va rebre més de 100 propostes de més de 20 països del voltant del món i que tenim el gran plaer i orgull de que vosaltres haguéssiu presentat una proposta col·laborativa amb gent que és d'aquí de la ciutat de Barcelona, de Basel, i que en realitat des de Suïssa a Catalunya intentar produir ponts, connexions locals i internacionals també és una de les grans missions d'aquest festival. Quan un intenta ficar sobre la taula temes importants sobre on ha d'anar l'arquitectura del futur, on hem d'estar situant les grans preguntes sobre l'arquitectura, la societat, el medi ambient. Evidentment, les qüestions de sostenibilitat i de circularitat estan al capdavant. Però aquestes preguntes, que majoritàriament són ètiques i polítiques, sempre han tingut una relació tensa, si volem dir-ho, amb l'estètica. Jo sempre dic que tot projecte d'avantguarda sempre ha anat lligat mà en mà en un projecte d'avantguarda estètic, formal, que és capaç de comunicar, de ser entès dintre d'un context generalitzat. Aquesta instal·lació, aquest pavelló que tenim al darrere, és per mi una de les grans manifestacions d'aquesta búsqueda estètica formal que també és una búsqueda ètica i política. I amb aquesta petita introducció vull donar peu a l'última hora model d'aquest festival, a un gran equip que ha sigut un plaer realment treballar amb vosaltres i que, bé, aquí senzillament us deixo la paraula. Comences tu, Blanca, suposo. Si us plau, ajudeu-me a donar-los la benvinguda a la seva hora model. Benvinguts.
Bueno, I will start presenting, and first of all, I think we wanted also to thank Eva for this really nice introduction and also for the amazing collaboration that we're all very, very happy about, and all the team, the technical team that made it all possible, as well as Eva, Tai, and Saul, and everyone that made this possible. So I'm Blanca Gardelegui, and today we will be speaking Kosmos and Parabase to present the pavilion. We will first talk a bit about circular architecture in general and about the new aesthetics of circular architecture and reuse and the aesthetics that we're trying to explore from the different practices. Then we will present the strategy, the metropolitan strategy that we presented to the competition. And then the pavilion that we have had the luck to build. Here I'm sitting with Pablo Garrido and Carla Ferrando from Parabase, and Artyom Kitaev and Leonid Slonimsky from Kosmos. And as I said, the future for us is circular. So for us, there's really now a turning point in architecture where we're moving from a linear system of construction to a circular system of construction. This is, until now, how construction has been in our cities. So basically how construction... it's not working. I think it's not... there, sorry. So the way that it has been... The way that the linear system has been working until now is going through extraction of materials, construction, and then after the life cycle of the building has gone through, on average 50 to 60 years, the building is demolished and waste is created. This is not a sustainable system that we're following. We're currently globally consuming 3 times more of the material that we're producing. So to continue in this line of thought is not possible. So we believe that the future is circular, that we need to bring a different way of working. Right now, the construction system, the construction industry globally is responsible for 40% of the CO2 emissions, 40% of the extraction of materials. This is a very big responsibility that we have then when we talk about circularity. Also, when we're extracting, constructing, and demolishing, we're also emitting CO2 emissions, which are the biggest responsible factor for the climate change. So what we're proposing is to change to a circular system of construction, where the lack of resources has made us give value to the material that already exists. We're living in European cities that are fully built, where everything that we need is already there, and where we don't need to extract more materials. So our proposal is to see the city like an urban mine where we can extract materials from. So not going to new sources of extraction, but to appreciating what we already have. At first, the buildings that we already have, to reuse them as they are, and only when this is not possible, to try to repair them, to reprogram them, to re-densify them, in order to adapt them to what we need. And only when this is not possible, and this is really not an option, then to dismantle these buildings, repair the components, so that we can reuse them in new buildings. Our proposal was based in a strategy of reuse in an urban scale, so that we can organize the logistics of these materials, and we can build with these materials. We will go a bit more in detail, but first we wanted to share with you also what are the design aesthetics that come also from this new system that we're proposing, or not only us, no, but that is now coming in the future, that we believe is coming in the next years. So we will now, Parabase and Kosmos will now present different experiments that they have been developing, competitions, projects, educational programs that they have been working on in order to work on this design aesthetics of reuse. So how will the cities of the future look like? And I will give the word to Pablo maybe to go, or to, yeah, so how will the cities of the future be like when the resources are exhausted? So we know that the resources are limited. What will the cities, what will architecture look like when these resources are no longer available? And I will pass so Leonid from Artyom? Yeah, I think you have. Yeah.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you very much, Blanca, for the introduction. And when we speak about, how does it work? Sorry, the green button. Okay, I have to point. Okay, now it works. Now we managed. So when we speak about reuse, first of all, we speak about resources and about available resources. And availability of resources actually defines the design, like in architecture. But the feature of the reuse that sometimes we have a certain limitations on a particular type of the resources available. So that would require re-understanding, or let's say redefining the role of the certain material or architectural element which it performs in the architecture. And I would like to start with a project which we did 6 or 7 years ago for Swiss Architecture Awards. And in this project, we worked with the materials which usually not really reflected by professional community, but inevitably would appear in buildings. I'm speaking about anti-bird spikes or road regulation cones, everything what we usually don't draw on the buildings, but it's somehow manages and organizes the city. Materials which protect us from being hurt by buildings or structures, and sometimes protect structures by being inhabited by people or other species. And we try to also to rediscover the potential of these materials and use them not in the way they're supposed to be used normally. So, for example, anti-bird spikes used as a structural material, or razor wire, which was carrying part of the installation. And this kind of redefinition of the, by redefining the use of the materials, to us was interesting to bring them in certain order, and and the installation was called New Order. We continued this experiment in a conversion of industrial cluster in the cultural cluster, of industrial area in the cultural cluster, and it was a temporary project with a very low budget, and over there we as well try to operate with the limited resources, and we had to redefine or like use the non-conventional material, like for example this insulation foil, which we used as a facade materials. Normally you can see it's used to insulate ductworks, and but in this case it was used as a facade material. So again, redefining the quality, redefining the purpose of the material, we believe is very important in architecture of reuse, as well as being very limited and I would say even functional. Like for example, this white disc, which is supposed to confuse perception of the space by the users, and let's say make less relevant or let's say less present irrelevant elements of the context, like for example this office building wouldn't be so important to us to have in this for the scenography of cultural space. But when we speak about environmental oriented architecture, we don't speak only about reuse. It's as well, we have to understand what is actually available on the site, how much should we pay for this, how much should we pay for the logistics, and pay, I'm speaking not only about financial representation, but also ecological payments, because for example, sometimes logistics takes up to half of the pollution of the material. So what we did in this small module for the refugees, which we built in the mountains of Georgia, we went on the construction market in the several kilometers from the village, and just checked what is available there, and also a bit inspected the local techniques and let's say this vernacular in a way technologies, like for example placing stones on the roof to prevent it from the wind loads, to prevent roof material to be taken by the wind, or the structure of the foundation of the building made out of the auto tires, and the whole design was kind of executed this way, so it would be able to build by non-professional builders, like the lady on the foreground of this image illustrates quite directly. Leonid will continue.
Yeah, and I will continue with the same project. It's a commune of, they call them free people in the mountains of Georgia. And it's a project where it's a big territory where we realized multiple projects, but all of them were bound by the topic of really minimal sources. And in this project, which were the shelters, we call them the fairy tale tents, the simple dwellings were realized thanks to textile, the structures which were done out of tents, out of textile with different patterns, because basically graphical patterns is what doesn't cost you anything in terms of production, but which creates architectural quality. And following the same example, after the technology will allow me, we went on and we created a community center for the same community, which was based on the reuse of an existing agricultural shed, which was already on the site when we arrived. And we were asked to transform this quite ugly red-brown shed into a place of a workshop, of a place of a public gathering, and a place of communal events. And when we looked at it closer, we realized that it looks actually a lot like a basilica, and that it has a certain qualities, and with the limited resources, and also being inspired by Tom Sawyer, who has invited his friends to paint the fence with white paint. We, as we call it, we transformed this agricultural shelter in a community center with a bucket of white paint. So the whole community has painted this building in this quite complex pattern, which gave it a new quality. We also created the little wings to cover the materials which the community was building their houses and their like everyday structures from, and we also cutted away the circle in order to give some light into this project. And this is how this building was activating the site. And one more example of reuse was done by us with our students from Geneva. We have addressed in post-COVID times the problem of reutilization of cruise ships. As you can imagine, the whole industry was very much affected by the COVID and people were not traveling. And so the task which we gave to the students was, this is how the cruise ships are reutilized right now. They're cut into pieces, brought into let's say, more poor countries, and there with a very dangerous, in very dangerous conditions, people disassemble them, and basically it's very the whole industry is super non-environmental friendly, but the way how they dismantle it is even worse. So we proposed it to connect it to the refugee crisis in Europe and to transform the building into, let's say, a series of apartments for refugees, and therefore seeing the resource, kind of the construction resource, even in the places where usually you don't see it. And the last project of our practice, which represents the values which we want to show with our pavilion today, is the competition which we did in Zurich, the winning proposal for Trimlichspital, which is a bigger scale than the projects which we presented before. It was a reconstruction of 3 brutalist buildings, which are considered in Zurich very ugly, and the city of Zurich wanted to demolish them. Not only they are ugly, but they're also not very functional. It was built in the 1970s, and it was the residences for medical personnel. Therefore, it was designed as a very, very kind of modest hostel with not so much, not such a good infrastructure. And the city of Zurich wanted to demolish these buildings. Yet the architects saw a value in them, and there was created a new association of young architects which proposed to throw an open competition in order to give a new future to these buildings. And there, following the already several years studio which we did in the Vienna University, which is called hardware software, we decided to apply the strategy which we usually apply to this type of buildings. We proposed to look at the existing buildings before demolishing them, or instead of demolishing them, to divide them into hardware and software, like in IT technologies, or like bones and, let's say, flesh, and basically to see that there is so-called hardware, which is the resource which the buildings has, and the software, which is a much more temporary and much more flexible and changeable infill. And therefore, we propose to combine these 2 topics and to work with these buildings. And here you can see both the combination of hardware and software, where the if the screen quality allows us, the gray elements, the gray concrete elements, they represent the hardware of the building, and all the rest is the temporary software which can be changed in order that the building can stay much longer, or almost like work eternally, while its program, its function, its use is changed. And we propose to kind of almost didactically separate the towers in 3 different time, let's say, spans, and we call them years, months, and days, and propose 3 different strategies. So first, basically, first is working with the things which can be done within the days, within a very short period of time, change the hardware within the days. So basically the concept is that you strip down the building to its essential bones, to its structure, to the hardware, and then you propose different variations of how you can alternate this building in order that it keeps functional and it does not require demolition. So the days, there was a day structure which was basically transformed by simple interventions by furniture. The months ones, which requires already some temporary architecture to be done, and the last, the years one, which requires already solid interventions in terms of the building. And these were the images which showed that stripped down to the basic bones, to the hardware, the structures were changed in this sense into residential building with the help of just furniture. In the case of the months tower, it was changed by the, let's say, a skirt of temporary scaffolding structure which allowed circulation and therefore allowed a much more flexibility in terms of organization of the plan. And the last, let's say, iteration of it was the years, where by removing the slabs, so therefore intervening even on the hardware, it allowed to create spaces of flexible program, of flexible size, and flexible, and therefore to create a building which would be like for many years relevant and would not require demolition. And on this slide, I would like to pass the microphone to pardon, yes.
Not the microphone.
Not the microphone. To Pablo Garrido.
Hello. So we wanted to just briefly explain a couple of projects from completely different nature. One that it's developed at the University of Mendrisio, where we teach with Leopold Banchini. And the very first week of the semester, we organized a workshop in this warehouse next to Mendrisio, which is a little village in the southern part of Switzerland. And we asked the students to survive in this warehouse for 1 week. And they had to come up, design, build with minimum means the artifacts or the architecture that they considered necessary to survive here for 1 week. So of course, it was about this first week about designing, but as well about gathering materials and all types of resources that they could find in the vicinity of the warehouse, of this greenhouse. And the first thing that they come up is this oven. So we could eat bread for the entire week, and it actually worked quite well. All of those projects, I mean, they were barely designed, and it was about more the process and improvisation and adaptation to the materials that they found. Another thing, it was like this structure that contained water. So it was kind of this Snelson sculpture with like 3 bars just holded with really thin wires. And then they also come up with a chill space. And it was built out of, like they found some textiles here and there, and then the wooden structure is out of wooden pallets that they disassembled and then reassembled in creating like this house-shaped structure. To sleep, they come up with a communal bed, which so the 30 students and the professors were sleeping together there, and it was made out of straw. And then they went to the hotel where all the professors stay, and they asked for the used bed sheet, I mean clean ones, but already old ones. And then they put them together so we could sleep here like for the entire week. As well as a moment of relax, we designed kind of a spa or a bath, and we using kind of this drum, or I don't know the name in English, but it's this drum of a washing machine where we can put or create the vapor. And this is how it looks from the outside. So it was like quite a simple wooden structure, but wrapped with this plastic foil, so it could keep the moist and the temperature. And last but not least, they also designed like a party place, and this is made with it's an inflatable space, and it's made with like really thin thermal sheets. And actually, it's quite nice here in the picture. You don't see it in the inside, but it's really nice that from the inside you could see outside, but from the outside you cannot see inside. So there is a mystery of what's going on there. And then after, we start the main projects by designing as well mock-ups, so one-to-one mock-ups. So it's also about, I mean, we are not dogmatic about the materials that they are using, but of course there is thoughts on circularity, on economics. So for instance, one of the recurrent topics is that they design mainly like these mock-ups with dry construction and bricks, so they can be reused and they are not alterated, so they can be disassembled and reassembled again. This, for instance, was a mock-up that the students collected, like used or second-hand clothes, and then designed kind of a frame where it could work kind of in compression. So it was like the opposite solution that we have here, like with the textile in kind of in tension. Here it was about mass. Also some other examples of this, maybe reassembling the idea of the greenhouse, but again with kind of reused and materials. More examples. And the same, no, to end up a bit with the brick, and again, it's working everything in compression, and then it's about like finding this specific project was interesting because the students put like a thin layer in between bricks, so due to the loads, the bricks were not were intact. And then changing completely the scale and the program of the project, and also to emphasize that, as Eva said at the beginning, I don't know if, or we are not, or we agree with this idea that reuse, circularity, and all these strategies are not related to any type of program, of scale, of aesthetics. And this is an example of a project from, it's a conventional housing project. I mean, conventional in terms of the program. And this was the starting point, actually. It was not, the site or the volumetry of the building was kind of given. It was like a master plan designed by other architects, and we were asked to use this catalog of elements that, actually it's the company or the organization where Blanca works, called Circular, where they have mapped available components and available materials from existing buildings that they are going to be teared down. And in this case, no, you can see the elements that they gave us. And one of the elements were like these concrete columns, and I mean, it's in German, but we were receiving the CO2 information about this column, so how much CO2 we were saving by using it. Also, like a detailed 3D model of this object, but at the same time, no, super detailed plans. I don't know if you can see it, but you could even. It was able even to understand where the reinforcement bars of these columns were, no? And of course, this is the 3D model of the component itself. Another structural component was these concrete slabs, where also we received the 3D model. And then not only structural elements, but also, like, for instance, like this corrugated metal sheet. Again with the 3D model, and also like all sorts of components, like fences. So actually our exercise, it was to combine them all, to reassemble them. And of course, I mean, we were asked just to use the catalog, but somehow a self-imposed constraint that we gave ourselves, it was to use as much as, or as many as possible of those components. And actually, this is a little bit, the solution that we arrived. And here you can see a little bit, no? Then I mean, it's an extract of the catalog where kind of the green parts are the in scale also the pieces that we were using, and in black the ones that we couldn't use because different reasons. And then this was the solution. So this is actually like a like a usual or a conventional social housing building, just made with these reused elements. Here it's really visible, no, this column, and actually it was about so combining, of course, components arriving from different families. One of the main topics was the connection between them. And with our structural engineer, Mario Monotti, we came with this solution. And then this was another part of the project where these are row houses, and here you can see like how these slabs are used as a facade, as a load-bearing facade, and as a structure of the project.
Yeah, so now we'll start to talk about what you see here behind. We have explained like how we have dealt with all these resources like in our practices in different countries, cities. But here when we land in Barcelona, like we didn't get a catalog as the project that we just explained. Here we have to look for what were the resources that we could use for this pavilion. And permanently temporary is the name we give to it. And yeah, somehow, as Blanca said before, we think we cannot extract and use natural resources anymore, but we have to look for what is available in the cities. As you have seen, like Barcelona is full of construction sites. So we think that all these construction sites could have so much material that we could use. Most of it is just like, yeah, thrown away. Then a part is reused for ecological concrete, and very little part is like used as it is. Then we did a tour around Barcelona to visit like several storage spaces where like it was really interesting and surprising for us to realize like Barcelona is like full of these like small or like big spaces with all kind of materials. Yeah, ones or some owned by the municipality, all others like are private. So yeah, we had to a bit look here and there to find the materials that we could present and like to show here, or what the ones that you see here behind. In all these materials, like the idea is also that we wanted to present different categories of materials. This is kind of there's a field full of these jerseys that you see all around the city. And this is like a temporary urban material, let's say. And this is more infrastructures, or yeah, just like some leftovers from that are just like storage there. Asphalt, also like to bring the idea that the asphalt, like just the 20% is reused. So could we use the other 80% for something else? Then yeah, sideboards, like sidewalks and borders, like from all the cities of Barcelona. Like a lot of materials were not really reused materials, but material that were there, like waiting its final location. Fences and water tanks, I don't know, and all, yeah, you can see, etc. Like these two big pieces that you see just here behind are infrastructural, is like parts of a big cylinder, like big arches that are made like to create tunnels. So they are like these ones that we see here, they were just stored and yeah, waiting to find like, yeah, its final location. Then another of the categories of these materials is the heritage. And we went in Via Favencia. There's like this amazing storage space with a lot of statues from all kinds, some of them because they are too damaged, so they cannot stay in the street anymore. Others that, yeah, they are just like in between two spaces that they were at some place and they had to tear down where they were, and now they are, yeah, just also waiting for its final position. That's the one that you see here, when normally like it's living in this like enclosed space and hidden from everyone. Also, we were surprised to see that some of these storage spaces are amazing architectural also buildings. Like here, yeah, this very nice ramp and this skylight with all these just like leftovers or materials all along this ramp. It was like incredible to see. And also from heritage, yeah, there's, for example, a Gaudi door that is waiting to be restored, like in the Museum of Design here behind. And yeah, looking apart from the storage spaces, like we were also looking for other materials that we could use. And then, yeah, we tried to, or like we realized that there is these pieces from Tir a l'Arc, from the building from Enric Miralles, that were teared down like long time ago. When we start to ask, it's like more than 10 years ago. These pieces are just like there, laying on the grass next to paddle and tennis courts. We don't hear you, no?
They're used as public toilets in a way, and they're so long in there that even in Google Maps there is a pin saying "ruins of Enric Miralles building," showing like that it's really like an eternal problem.
yeah, at the beginning, like we wanted to bring them here and make the pavilion out of them, like a bit to try to, yeah, make them so that everyone realized, no, that they are there, and maybe we should find at one point, like, yeah, a use for it. And that's what the building had when it was alive. And yeah, that was Leonid was saying that you can really see them in Google Maps. And that's a bit the summary of all these, after all these days, like seeing all these resources, we did this selection that is what we, like what you can see here behind us.
Yes, and I will, I don't know if it's, yeah, you can hear me now probably. I will take over, and of course, like when we had such a luxurious choice of all the possible materials, we start to discuss what could be actually the vision of the reuse. And it's interesting that the moment you start to discuss reuse, there's certain aesthetical aspiration or kind of expectation how it's supposed to look like. There's certain kind of patchwork of different type of textures and colors. And we try to see how we actually can align them and bring them in the other constellation, and we came to the conclusion that probably we'll try to use all the different materials, all the different types of the materials in terms of the dimensions, like types of geometries, as well as the cultural and functional value. So we combine together cultural heritage or historical heritage together with ultimately infrastructural materials, but they have to be all of the same kind, so of the same material. In our case, it's concrete. And it's important to us to use all of them, even though they're not supposed to be, not structurally, but the way we use them, it's not what assumed to be, it's not the way they assume to be used. So we try to redefine, again, the purpose of their use and see how we can assemble in one constellation. I think, yeah, otherwise I will say every time next, and I think it could be annoying. So yeah, here you could see like the central element assembled out of water reservoirs, plays as the main attraction, indicates the pavilion on the site. And the statue sets the relationship with the park, and it's interesting, it somehow takes this position in such a way that many of the visitors was asking us when the statue was installed, so kind of it wasn't really clear that it was just borrowed for the pavilion. Huge pieces of the tunnel indicated this main entrance, which is supposed to funnel in the visitors, and sets this urban scale. So it's the one which is behind us. It's kind of a bit weird condition when we show the photos of something what you actually can see behind us. Nevertheless, and inside pavilion we use this netting, like which normally used to actually cover the construction scaffolding or the materials to prevent dust from the construction site. And we try to achieve this rather ephemeral feeling from the inside. So when the reused elements would be more exposed, and the net would more define the area of the public space. So it was important somehow to bring the storage, temporary storage of the material into the public space without really obstructing the quality of the storage, the main quality of the storage being used, being assembled and disassembled. So that's how the elements, the reused elements, have been exposed. And the additional netting, what was important to us, we tried to assemble this material in pavilion in such a way that it would be easy disassembled, and most of all the materials would be wouldn't be damaged. So, for example, extents of the nets, we didn't cut, we just roll them, which would provide additional rigidity for the edge of the net, and wrap. Yeah, here we could see how the dialogue of the statue is set not only with the park but also with the visitors, and Carla with someone. This part of the project, which is on my left and on your right, it's supposed to be the exchange point of the materials, so kind of this material crossing point. Here we envision that people could come, pick the material, and probably leave some material, almost like book crossing, but with a more like construction material, like light items. It was nevertheless kind of interrupted by the fence over the night and restriction to touch the material, the pavilion. Doesn't work. Yeah, and the tower of the water reservoirs indicates verticality of the pavilion, and and keep attracting people over the like in the evening, in the night. Again, this kind of unexpected conversation with Akbar Tower, and not only even people it attracted, and combination of different brutality of the steles, an exposure of the actual power of the reused material that was in a contrast with a light netting. And again, transparency and the heaviness, which could show how even the most heavy and brutal materials like concrete panels could be used for temporary purpose in case they are attached and joined together in a temporary way. The fixation of the material was like how to connect and bring them together was a very important issue to us. Like, for example, here, this rolled stretch of the netting was just loaded by the concrete sphere, which was stretched over the head of the statue, which you will see on the next slide, or if you will go around pavilion. Sorry, I wanted to go faster, but not everything. Technically, I'm not able. Again, it was every time important to expose the actual element and keep the netting as a more ephemeral frame to indicate the public space, while preserving the power of the reused elements. And all the elements have been connected in such a way that could be, none of them, as I said, have been damaged, and they will be disassembled afterwards. So we sometimes use this metal zip ties or the straps, either just place them on top of each other. And in the end, we designed this pavilion out of available material, and we remain and we will leave this material available for future reuse. Blanca?
Okay, so life cycle.
The last part of our presentation.
Yeah, we're almost done, and yeah, I think one of the aspects that we also wanted to work with was not only the architecture. So, as was already explained, we were trying to work with the aesthetics and the designs that come from this new availability of materials. No, so what resources do we have, and how can we work with these resources? That was one topic of the pavilion, but we also had an idea about the urban strategy, which I think is again important to bring back. So we were also asking ourselves, how will the cities of the future, how will reuse impact the cities of the future? So how will it have an impact in a bigger scale? And how it's working right now in reuse, one of the very important challenges is the logistics of reuse. So every time that you have available material, it has to be transported to a storage space, and then it has to be brought back to the new project. So one of the ideas that we have is in the future, you don't want to have these storage spaces outside of the city, because this increases the transport, of course, and it's having all these materials that are that have a great potential in them, which are being left without any type of use for sometimes very long periods. So as we saw during the project, even the city of Barcelona has all these amazing storages full of potential, with heritage statues that are waiting to be repaired, with pieces of tunnels that are also waiting to be put in place, that are completely new. Pieces of asphalt that were just taken away from the roads, and there's all these materials full of potential that is waiting in storages in the periphery of the city, and that has no use for long periods. What we were proposing with the pavilion was to use pavilions and to use public spaces as ephemeral storages of this material. So if every time there was a material available in a building, instead of being driven to the periphery of the city, if it could be used to create ephemeral public spaces. And this is a bit what we try to do and how it was already explained. Something that was also very interesting for us was also this matching of materials. So really to understand that no new material needed to be created. So it's one of the criticisms, no, that is very often done towards festivals or laboratories, no, where a lot of material is created. And I think here it was very well taken care of, that there was no waste produced. And I think it's something that was very well taken care of in all the pavilions. And what we tried also is not even to produce new material. So you can also see inside some photos of all the storages that we went to visit, also to discover all the potential, no, that lies in the city and in this. And in these storages. And it was also very exciting. We realized a workshop for furniture design, also using leftover materials that were found, leftover materials from the pavilion itself. So even the leftovers from the leftovers in the pavilion. So how can we also profit from these materials? And we did a workshop last weekend also to make seating arrangements with very, very cool participants that were very excited to make furniture with us. And we think it was also very interesting because it's not a process that we as architects should only bring forward, but circular economy is not only about architecture, we're only one part of it, no? So I think to make everyone aware that this is a process that we have to bring together, it was also very exciting to be working also with the children. And this is where a bit the results of the chairs. It's also, I mean, it's always easier to work with reuse in a small scale. So it's always faster, there's no bureaucracy behind. There's no big transports, there's no responsibilities. So of course it was a fresh and fun activity to do. I think in the pavilion, it's also worth saying that all the challenges that we faced and that are faced in reuse. So for example, these tunnel pieces that were brought, they're actually 6 tons each. So all the challenges that this presents to be transported, you know, the weight that we're bringing into the ground, no? So it's also some things that are also questions, no, that we have. Also, for example, these are the tunnel pieces from Sorige that were brought. And it's also interesting, for example, the responsibilities that are taken, no? Like, for example, with the Sorige pieces, what would happen? Usually when we work with reuse, we always allow for a 10% buffer so that there's always 10% of more pieces than we need, because we always assume that there will be pieces that will be maybe damaged in the process or that will not be the right dimension. So this was also something important. There's always a point of uncertainty when working with reuse. Or also, for example, with the example of the statue, which was a very important point for us to show also the heritage and the potential of the heritage that is in the city, and but also the responsibility that we were taking bringing the statue, no, and how this could be assumed. And yeah, we would really like to open some time for questions and for discussion, which for us is also important. And yeah, thank you, gracias.
While we wait for someone to actually think about the question, I think it's fascinating also for everyone to know that the sculpture that it's part of this installation is Minerva. Minerva was for some time the symbol of Barcelona. She is the goddess of wisdom, arts, and strategic warfare, what I think, in fact, is also representative of this installation. No? Is a strategic warfare towards certain ideas of consumption and material extractivism. It is definitely a monument to the arts, and obviously, at the same time, in this case, to a city of Barcelona, because it has gone through its own archaeology of its own infrastructures. I think maybe perhaps some of the questions, and if anyone has a question, please raise your hand, for me would have to do with also the nature of collaboration, no? The fact that that I know that friendship is one of the things that drives and moves the world, but I would like to ask you more about how you came into this partnership. How has it been? Has this installation helped you? Is the context of a festival something that maybe should force people to collaborate a lot more? Or you could say actually it's a lot harder because of the stress, timing, and difficulties of it? I think there is always something very interesting about trying to get out of your own context, of your own space of comfort, and in this case, to make this collaboration, no? And also, Blanca, you coming as a kind of external third agent, perhaps, to be part of this process. Maybe if you could talk a bit more about that, and how within this creative process, you had a very clear agenda, what you wanted to do, but in the decision-making of every design decision, of every aesthetic decision, I'm sure there were like monuments of discussion as well.
Collaboration is every time hard, but it's much easier than designing alone, because you get evaluation of your decisions much faster, and the more controversial this collaboration is, the more fruitful it is, because you get the grades not after you make the proposal, but in the process of formulating it. But I think, especially a festival with also such an open program, it's every time a place for the statement, and for the statement collaboration is actually inevitable, I think. And I think it was cool. I mean, I personally enjoyed it. I cannot say for everyone.
Yeah.
No, maybe I speak the other side of the story. But no, I mean, we were always speaking about collaborating for other stuff. Actually, we are. I mean, we are half based in Barcelona, but most of us in Switzerland as well. So yeah, mainly for projects or competition in Switzerland. But yeah, this was an opportunity, and we found that we have like affinities in the way of thinking about this specific topic, and I guess others too, but this one as well. And then yeah, then in terms of decision, in terms of design, I mean, maybe the most I mean, inside stories, but it was the roof was a big issue. We had like different options for the roof, but actually. The short time that we had to design it, and also money-wise, in terms of yeah, technically, how was the easiest solution, or the solution that met most conditions? It was this. So actually, there was not much discussion, no. So kind of the reality brought us here somehow.
Yeah. Now I tell the other side of the story. No, I'm joking. No, I mean, I think it was also very interesting because we all met in Herzog Demeron, actually designing in Herzog Demeron, but that was more than more than maybe 8 years ago, something like that. So that was a very long time ago. And I mean, we all went in very different directions. So for example, I'm not really designing so much in my day-to-day. I'm working in Circular, which is a startup that does reuse, no? So I'm kind of rather consulting on circularity and on reuse. So for me, personally, I mean, sometimes I also do collaborations with Kosmos, but for me it was very interesting to bring these two sort of design, but also circularity, to bring them somehow together. So, and it was also, I think we all also have a standard of working, no, which is also similar. We know a bit how to, so this was also interesting, but it's interesting that although we all developed in different ways, we're also working in very similar topics. So I think that was also very interesting, no, to see that it really seems like it's going in one direction. I also think in Switzerland there's a very, very strong movement right now towards circularity and reuse, and yeah, I think this is also something that is bringing together this movement.
Yeah. There is something that one always aspires when one moves from the space of practice to the space of cultural production or facilitation or agitation, that is to identify all the people that globally are working on the same issues, to identify the differences and the knowledge and the expertise that they develop within those local contexts to ultimately produce knowledge exchange. We could think that in academic context, conferences were about that. We could think that historically World Fair exhibitions, or if you want cultural capitals, were developing towards that direction. And I like to think that, of course, the Venice Biennale is also one of those settings, but still the topics are so big and the locality is always the same that ultimately ends up being a kind of a sum of different parts that never accounts or amounts to a much larger sum than those two. And I think that the festival like Model can really somehow open up the door to this possibility of collaborations for people who actually think of important topics, to bring them together and to think of the festival as the space where they can explore them, where they can test them, and where they can also share them with much larger constituencies. Do we have a question? Yes, we have. Now we have done enough of warming up. We're going to have a question. Do we have another microphone? I'm going to give you mine. Raquel.
How are you, Eva? You are like a hurricane in our lives. We've been working with her, and it's been a pleasure, but she's also like a force of nature, so it's been a ride. No? Okay. Question to whom? I just arrived, so I don't really know what you were talking about. But okay, I just wanna know how it's been to create all this, and if it's you have had to use a lot of your imagination, and if you found something which you thought it was impossible to find in one of the places where you have found the materials to create the whole construction.
Maybe I can reply here, and also following up at what Eva said about the festival and the comparison of festival to Biennale. We find it very valuable that in this festival there is this possibility of not only constructing things but also experimenting with things. And I think that the unique possibility of this pavilion was, which I personally never experienced in other projects, that we could really in real time, it was not fake, collaborate with the city of Barcelona, therefore with lots of, with municipalities and with different actors, and really meeting, let's say, people who are not even now involved in the project, people who were running the storages or who were running these concrete production factories and so on. And therefore, for us, it was not just, let's say, representation like it happens in Biennale. You do a project 5 years ago and then you print panels and bring it to another part of the world. Neither it was kind of a, let's say, a pavilion which we knew how it will be, and it again will represent our offices. It will be just promotional things. It was a process of learning. It was a process of discovering. We discovered not only new materials for our pavilion, we discovered new places in Barcelona. We discovered new people, new friends, new methodologies, new construction techniques. So it was for us a great learning process. And even if the pavilion would not be at all good, I would say that the process was super relevant, and then we are happy with the pavilion itself. So then it's a nice kind of a nice ending. But the whole way how it was organized, and also the fact that we were given this experimental freedom, not in terms of shape, but in terms of all these processes, for me was one of the most valuable things. And for me, maybe the most interesting part was this days of exploring these peripheral storages and really looking into these treasure boxes. And I think this was the most interesting thing of the pavilion. And I think the thing which is interesting is that it's really kind of, basically it's not our project, it's a project of Barcelona. It's a mirror of little pieces of Barcelona brought together, and that's why we feel that people, not only architects, but also the local community, they appreciate it because they understand it's their own city, just represented in a miniature. So I think this was the most valuable part. And again, thanks for giving us this possibility.
That was a beautiful. We have time for one more question because we have a looming cloud. So please go ahead.
Thank you so much, guys, for the lecture. So my question is super practical. As you said, Leonid, you collected all these storages and people. Do you think that you can somehow push it further, like pursue these things to open up for, I don't know, architects in Barcelona, so your pavilion can just start up this the dialogue, how we, like as an architect, can use this recycle thing? So maybe some sort of like a roadmap or something, where to go, who to contact, so sort of like...
I mean, I can give later the microphone to anyone who wants to add. I think that was the goal. And I think that was the goal also of the organizers. And I think that's why kind of we clicked, just so you know, when we won the competition, we didn't have a a drawing, because we didn't know what we would get. There was a concept, there was a kind of a diagram, and then it was open-ended. And I think the point of this experimental pavilion is to open this. And one of the points of us also to bring these heavy materials is also to show that reuse is not only about reusing, I don't know, like old doors or old, I don't know, painted pieces of metal, but it's actually the city has so much potential, and I think this, we hope that it will make a further movement. And if anyone wants to help us realize the pavilion from Enrique Mirai's pieces, here we are.
I would also add a couple of things, like where we probably have to go, because any festival, and meaning of any festival or biennale, it's rise up the question and also push the industry for certain changes. Because pavilion is a very experimental and light typology, but the organization of the entire construction industry is actually resists to any changes. And for example, these packages of responsibility and organization of the market, when you have independent contractors responsible for different parts, and then also, like in case of any damage or accident or whatever, whose insurance company will cover which expenses or damages. That's actually one of the biggest problems, because any reuse requires like very clear survey, and after this survey, the responsible person or responsible company should take a risk to use these reused materials, and executing working with the new materials, building new, is much more safe and faster. But therefore most of the participants of the market and of the industry, they're actually resisting and therefore this shift is so slow. But nevertheless, I think precedents like this festival and another professional activities which would force industry to rethink the entire organization are absolutely necessary if we want to really make the change. And again, then thank you for pushing for this. Thank you.
No, I mean, I think it's really incredible to have you here. I think you have really done a fantastic work. I'm extremely happy to have met you, to have seen and witnessed the process of your work, from all the different roofs to each one of the different supports. I think it's a fantastic pavilion, and I think we actually are making just a small contribution to this history of architecture that we are trying to contribute, but most importantly, to the way in which cities and citizens can also ask for different things when they ask for buildings in their own cities and public space. Thank you so much. Thanks.